Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Mindful Momentum podcast. I am your host, Robin Todd, and super honored today to have Dr. Vince Hafeli with us, an expert in the space of mental health in the construction industry, and just humbled that he is taking time out of his day to visit with us. And I have to tell you, Vince, it was interesting, and so our audience knows I've been watching you for numerous years via your TED Talks. You have a couple of them, maybe more than I know, and we actually share a lot of your TED Talks in our trainings and with people in the construction industry, and just moved, inspired. It's a powerful story, and so about a month ago, I thought, "Hmm, wonder if Vince would be willing to be on my podcast." And I thought, well, okay, I have nothing to lose and everything to gain, and reached out, and he immediately said yes. It's so excited. So just thank you so much for being here, Vince. Let me just tell our audience a little bit about you with your bio here. Um, so Dr. Hafeli has with nearly 4 decades of experience in the construction industry. He currently serves as the president of Ajax Paving Industries in Florida. His groundbreaking work on suicide in the construction industry, backed by his doctorate from the University of South Florida, has made him a passionate advocate for empathetic leadership and mental health awareness. Outside of his professional achievements, Dr. Hafeli is an accomplished athlete, having completed 11 140.6 Ironman events. Wow, amazing. Can't wait to hear a little bit about that. His newest challenge is preparing for a trek along the Appalachian Trail. We are excited to dive into his insights on leadership, resilience, and mental health in this episode. So, welcome, Dr. Hafeli.
Good morning.
Well, let's just start out with a little bit of your story, and you can tell as much or as little as you want to our audience, but give them a little bit of a background of how you kind of got to this place of being an advocate for mental health in this industry.
You want the 5-minute version or the 20-minute version?
I will let you decide.
I grew up in a southern part of Illinois, and my family, my immediate family, my mother and brother and father, we were very close. So family was really instrumental. I mean, we horseback rode together, water ski, rode motorcycle. We did pretty much everything together. And in 1985, at that point, I'm 23 years old, 22, 23, and that's when I broke into the construction industry. So I'd always grown up with this belief that men are macho and strong, and I landed in the construction industry, and that's even more emphasizing that hey, we don't, big boys don't cry, and we don't share our emotions and things, right? And so fast forward to May of '89, and I got a call from my mother that wanted to let me know my brother was terminally ill. And my brother was 9 years older than me. So in 1989, he would have been, what, 36 years old, I guess. And that was in May. And in July, my father passed. And my wife and I had the opportunity to let him know before he passed that he was going to be a grandfather again. We were having twins. The twins were born, and we lost one in November and the other one in December. We jumped to 1993. My brother passed, and we learned just before he passed that my mother had cancer, and she was soon gone. So, my upbringing, all the people that I had that I could really talk to and bounce ideas off of, and I could go and cry to, were gone. And I tell people that when we lost the twins, my wife and I mean, we're divorced now, but my wife at the time, we really didn't ever even hardly talk about that. And I didn't want to initiate the conversation because I felt like, hey, she's got her struggles and I've got my struggles with my family and the struggles with the twins. I'm not gonna put any more pressure on her or any weight. And I tell people that was probably maybe the worst decision I ever made in my entire life because that led to a downward spiral. I kind of drove a wedge in our marriage. I became somewhat self-centered, angry. Um, I had this belief at the time there can't be any God because if there was, why would a God do what he's done to a good person? And after that, I became not such a good person for quite a few years. Um, so in 2007, I was working for Ajax at the time. The first 17 years of my career from 85 to '02, I worked on the engineering side of the business from geotechnical material firms. I worked for the Florida Department of Transportation for a while. So '02 was my first time working for a contractor. And I came to Ajax to set up their quality control department for some new Florida DOT specifications. In 2004, I took over as the general manager of the company, took over all their plants, and in '07, I became the vice president of Ajax. So um, I tell people I broke into the industry in 1985, making $4.50 an hour. 2 hours a day, I made $45 a week. That was my starting point. And now it's '07, and I've gone from being that $45 an hour guy to being a laboratory manager, a field technician. I became a project manager, both while I worked at DOT and afterwards for engineering firms. And now I'm the vice president of Ajax. So 2007 was probably the best year of my life, career-wise, professionally wise. Probably even better than 2019 when I became president here at the company, because there was a lot of economic things that were going on that prior to the great downturn of our economy. We landed a huge project at Ajax in '07 that really set us up and carried through all of that. We didn't feel any of the pain of that. So '07 was really professionally a great year. Personally, it was probably the worst year of my life. Um, at work, I didn't feel like I could do anything wrong, and at home, I didn't feel like I could do anything right. I, I felt hopeless. I felt like I was a loser. I felt like I was a failure. I felt like I was letting everyone down. When I went to work, I felt like I was lifting everybody up. I was doing everything right. And in '07, I came home and we had dinner. And after dinner, I put my dishes away in the dishwasher. The dishes are clanking as I'm walking away. It's my wife rearranging them. And that sound just set me off. And I walked and got the keys to my truck and walked out of the house and drove out about a quarter mile from where I'm sitting right now behind our asphalt plant. And that's where I was going to end my life that night. And got a call from the lady that was my wife at the time that uh, shortly, our marriage ended in '08. And she told me, we know where you're going. We know what you're going to do. And your son's on his way there to get you. And I wasn't going to let my son find me that way because at the time he would have been 17, 18 years old. And so I quickly turned around and went home and told her, hey, I just out for a ride. Nothing's going on. But she knew something was going on because a couple of weeks earlier we'd sat with a marriage counselor, and I calmly explained to the marriage counselor that, hey, I'm going to take my life and here's all the reasons why. And in my mind, I really had good reasons. In my mind, I had really good reasons why everybody else was going to be better off. Um, I don't want to tell people why I thought they would be better off because that may give someone else ideas. But in my mind, and I'm not telling you those were sane thoughts because they weren't, but that's where I was. I was at very calm and at peace with it. It had taken me a long time to get to that point. And so I went home and for 14 years, the only people that knew about that night was what became my ex-wife, my son, and myself. And again, my ex-wife, which was my wife at the time, we never really talked about it because we don't talk about those things. Um, I never knew how it impacted my son until after he came and saw, I guess what was the third TEDx talk I did in Tampa, I invited him to. So at the time, Brandon was 34 years old, and I never knew the impact it had on him until I got home and he sent me a text message thanking me for inviting him. And he said, hey, now I finally understand why. So, hey, selfish, shame on me, all those things for never having that conversation. But again, we don't talk about those things, right?
Right.
So, in 2021, I decided to go back to school and get my doctorate degree. Um, I kind of joked with my kids when they were younger, you're going to have to call me doctor one day before I die. And so that's really, I had no ambition of what I was going to do with a doctorate. I wasn't going to do anything for my career at the point. I didn't think it was going to do anything for me, but hey, I told the kids I was going to do it one day, so I'm going to go do that. And so I went there wanting to research what frontline leadership looks like in the construction industry. Because, hey, this industry is like a lot of industries. We have a great paving foreman, and when he leaves, we look around the crew and say, you're the best guy on the crew, so you'll make a great foreman. Here's your promotion, here's your raise, and good luck. And we set them up for failure. And so when I told one of the professors 6 months into the program that that's what I intended to research, he looked at me and kind of laughed, and he said, that's pretty lame and weak. He said, other industries have done that. Go study, go look at why great doctors, great surgeons make terrible hospital administrators. He said, it's the same thing you're wanting to do, it's just a different industry. It's at a higher level, and you're wanting to do it at a lower level. So take their narrative and rewrite it, and you'll be done. Go find something better. So I had written a paper that in April or May of 21, 2 months before he gave me that talk, that I got published at a conference over in India. And the hook line in that paper was about suicide in the construction industry, something that would be eye-catching to get people to want to read all the boring stuff in the back. And so I sat and thought about it, and I sat and thought about my past, and I went back and said, hey, how about suicide in construction? And he said, well, why? And so I started telling him some of the numbers. And he said, wow, that would be powerful if you could do something with that. So now it's June of 21, and suddenly 4 people know about that night in 07. Professor knows. And so I began to do research on it. And I thought, what could I do with that here at Ajax? Could I do anything to make a difference? So in July of 21, now it's about 3 weeks after I've told the professor I'll do this, at a weekly manager meeting, we used to meet every Friday with all the department heads, 16 of us. And I told them that on January 3rd of 22, we're going to roll out a mental health initiative at Ajax and be open to talk about suicide. And again, I shared with them the numbers I was learning about our industry. And for whatever reason, that day, I told those 16 people about that night in 2007. So now suddenly 20 people know, right? In October, I was sitting in the backyard, and my wife, Stacy and I had been married at that point for 12, 13 years. I kind of had watery, teary eyes, and she said, what's wrong? And I said, I'm going to tell you about a night in 2007 that you don't know about. And I probably should have told you before I told 16 people at work, but I didn't. And that's kind of how it played out. Timing's everything in life. And So when I told her, she looked at me and said, "Well, how are you today? How do you feel?" And I said, "Since I have told you and told people at work, I feel like I can finally breathe. I feel like just this weight of bricks has been lifted off of my shoulder." Um, None of the 16 people at work, the professor, none of them laughed at me, at least not to my face. None of them, I didn't hear rumors in the company of people, behind the scenes talking about Vince and what he did and God, can he even lead this company? And that's one of the reasons why I never told anybody that night, because I didn't want to lose the next promotion. Because from 85 to '07, I had had a lot of promotions. And I just knew that if I told the owner of the company, the president of the company at the time about that night, he would look at me and say, "And you want to run this company? You can't even, you want to end your own life. You got a marriage that's failing, and you want to give them." At the time we had, depending on where you're at in that journey, we had anywhere from 200 to 400 employees. You want me to trust you with that? So that's why I didn't tell anyone. But what I learned is when I was at a peer group meeting with 7 other contractors, and the president of our company, the one that I didn't want to hear this story because I didn't want to lose the promotion, um, a topic came up, and it was on suicide, and I don't even remember how we hit on that. And a moderator that led the peer group for us, sitting just beside me, leaned over in my ear, and he said, "Anyone that do that," he said, "they're just crazy, they're loony, there's something wrong with them in their head." And I said, "Time out." I said, "I'm going to tell you all a story. I'm going to tell you a story that not even Mike, sitting at the end of the table." My boss, the guy I've worked with now for at the time 19 years, um, the guy that made me the president of the company 2 years ago, he doesn't even know this. So after today, I said, "I'm assuming I probably won't have a job at Ajax anymore, but what the hell, I'm going to tell you anyway." And I told him about that. And when the meeting ended, I mean, you heard this part of the end of my TEDx Mississippi talk. Mike and I are walking down the hallway, and he comes up and he puts his arm around me, and I thought, well, here it comes. This is going to be the, "Hey, it's been great, and I love you, but you need to go find something different." And he simply said, "I'm proud of you. That took courage." Um, and I thought, wow, that's not what I expected. Um, And I'd known Mike a long time, and I knew how he cared about employees, and I knew how culture, everything's to him. I don't have anything bad I can say about Mike, but still, that's not what I expected. And so, we go to dinner that night, and one of the other contractors walks up, and he leans over and he says, "I'm going to tell you something." He said, "But don't tell anyone." And I can tell you now because he has come out and professed it to his company, and they've addressed it. He said, "I lost my sister to suicide a few years ago, and we told everyone it was a car wreck. We didn't want them to know it was suicide." So I didn't tell anyone. Um, Another gentleman walks up later at dinner, and he says, "Hey, I lost my sister to suicide, and but don't talk about it to anyone." So I didn't, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, okay, here are 2 guys in the same room. Neither one of them knows. What a great support they could be for one another. But none of them want to know because of the shame. So that was in February of 22, if memory serves me right. And yeah, it was February of 22, because in August of 22, we were at one of the other contractors in the group. We were at his place for our mid-year meeting. And he said, "I want to tell you all a story." He said, tell you about my sister that died by suicide. And we came back here at the company and we've rolled out a mental health initiative because of what Vince said that day. And so we're addressing it in the company, and we hid it for many years, but now everybody knows. And he explained how she got there and why. And then the other gentleman said, well, I'm there with you. Just so you know, I lost my sister. Um, so the conversations begin just when people feel like they're in a safe place. So we did what I said I would do on that July 16th of 21, on January 3rd of 22. At our annual safety kickoff day, I got up in front of probably 400 people that day and told them about this path we were going to go, and told them that, hey, we were going to go slow. There'd be no bullying, no demotion, no repercussions. We just want you to know that we're here for you if you're struggling, or if a family member's struggling, we're here for them also. We're not going to cram this down your throat because men don't want things pushed at them. So we're going to take it as far as we want. You can accept it as much as you want. And that's where we'll begin. And that's where we began. And about 6, 7 hours later, when the meeting ended, I got a call from a project manager, and he was driving back to Tampa, and he had he actually was a project superintendent, and he had an equipment operator in the truck with him. And he said, I want to let you know the equipment operator has been on my job for several months, and he just didn't seem right. But hey, I didn't want to talk to him because I didn't know if I should or could. Does that violate any type of policies? Am I getting into his business? So I didn't. And today on the way back, we had a conversation, and he's struggling. And I also learned that I'm struggling in the conversation. So the equipment operator, he got with Sandy, our HR director, and he went and got some assistance, and he came back to me in July of 22, and at our mid-year meeting, and he said, I want you to know you did 2 things that day on the stage. You saved my marriage and you saved my career. So thank you. And the superintendent that went driving in there, he eventually put himself into an alcoholic treatment center. And both gentlemen still work here. Their careers were saved. We paid the gentleman's salary while he went into a treatment center. We didn't chastise him. We didn't put him further behind on bills. We helped him and we took care of him. So I mean, that's my story. That's how we got to where we're at Ajax. And I mean, the other thing we did at the company was, I didn't want this an initiative to go away when I left, because I'll be 63 here shortly. I'm near the end of my career, and I wanted it to carry on. So I said, let's create a team, and we created a team called the Ajax Warriors. And about 10% of the company now is our Warriors. And some of them are paving foremen, some of them are the company presidents, some of them are HR, some are safety. They're kind of sprinkled throughout the company. It gives people someone on their level, someone that they may know, that they feel comfortable with, a place to go and ask questions about mental health or about suicide. What resources do we have? Or, hey, I have a concern about Joe over here, and what do we do? Because we've had several of those. And so we created the team, and we had one guy that was just running with it. And I said, okay, if that one guy leaves, we're not going to have a team. So now we have a chairman, we have a vice chairman, and we have a secretary, and they're going to rotate on and off of the team. So we'll always have people coming through the team. So I'm convinced that the team will continue after I'm gone. And when I did my research, I interviewed executives from across the country. I interviewed 30 of them. And what I learned was that the leadership of the companies have to be the ones to say we're going to do something. The leadership of the company has to be the one that stands behind it and supports it.
Yeah.
It's beneficial if the leadership company has some type of struggle or something personally that's impacted them, that they're willing to share. I mean, I did a podcast with one gentleman, and he said, I had heart surgery And we hid it from the employee because I didn't want him to know. And he said, after our talk today, I'm going to go back and let everybody know because it's important that they know that I'm just flesh and bone, just like they are. And I have
Mhm.
struggles and issues just like they do. Because if I can't share my vulnerability with them, how will they ever show their vulnerability with me? So that's what leaders have to be able to do. And everybody probably has some type of story they could share if they're willing to. Um, So yeah, we created the team that's about 10% of the company. They've all been certified through mental health first aid program.
Great.
All supervisors in our company are going through and being certified through VitalCog.
Mhm.
So they know how to manage people and talk to people at their levels. Um, I guess maybe that was the 20-minute version I gave you, wasn't it?
No, it was yeah, wow. I mean, there's so much to unpack. Um, but yes, thank you. I mean, just for your vulnerability to be honest. And I know you've been sharing this a while, and it does get easier. And a couple of things that jump out um, to me. One is what a gift you gave your son to invite him to that TED Talk, and what a gift you gave him in that you didn't take your life. I recently did a training on using mindfulness to help prevent suicide ideation and learn that children of parents who take their own life through suicide actually increase, as you may know,
Yeah,
it's like 600%.
yeah.
And that can oftentimes, if someone is thinking about it, kind of jolt them out of kind of where they are into the reality of the ripple effect of of that. And so what a gift you gave your son by
Yeah.
choosing life that day.
Well,
Yeah.
in my talks I go around and give, I show pictures of me with Mike Rowe, the Dirty Jobs guy, and with sports cars and
Oh,
Harleys, and I show my picture of my daughter in her doctorate gown when she graduated,
wow.
and I tell all of them I would have missed the high school graduations, I would have missed the military graduations, I would have missed
Yeah.
that car, I would have missed that cycle, I would have missed all
All of
those
it.
events in my life.
Yeah. But I
Mm.
think it also is, and I love talking to people about this too, because we're hardwired to survive. Everything that we
Yeah.
do that we're born with, we're always trying to increase our chance of survival. And so when someone is at that place, they aren't in it. There is an illness. There are things going on because it's very counterintuitive to how we were designed. Um,
You mentioned the word illness. Um, when I interviewed all these executives, I would ask them, what if I say the words mental health, what comes to mind?
mhm,
And their answer would be, for most of them, if not all of them, bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. I would finish the interviews and turn off the tape recorder, and I would thank them for giving me their time.
mhm,
And I would tell them I want to educate you on two things. One, people don't commit suicide. The second thing I would like to educate you on is you never answer my question about mental health. And they would say, well, yeah, I did. Bipolar,
mhm.
schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. And I said, well, that's not mental health. That's a subset of mental health. It's mental illness. And there's this strong association that if you want to talk about mental health, there is no positive piece of it in people's minds. Mental health is all negative. Yet when we talk about physical health, maybe you
Right.
picture LeBron James, a guy to look at him at the age of 40, I think he is, or you think of a gymnast, you think of somebody that's powerful or strong,
Mhm.
but then you also think of, hey, physical health, there could be some heart disease, or there could be issues, but there's a spectrum on the physical health side that people think of, yet on the mental health side, it's all negative. So I tried to educate people that we need to learn to talk about mental health openly because we want employees to have positive mental health. Because if you
Right.
don't have, in our industry, particularly in construction, if you don't have positive mental health, how can you have positive physical safety? How can, um, an example I give in talks is a man that came to work and he had worked for many years on a man lift, and he got on every day and put on a safety lanyard, closed the gate, did everything perfect. One day he went up and he fell off the man lift. Luckily, he wasn't high enough to die, but he fell off and he was injured. And when they interviewed and asked him, "We watch you do this right every day. What happened today?" He said, "I got a terrible call on the way to work about my daughter. I just mentally wasn't here."
Right.
Uh, he wasn't suffering from mental illness as far as I know, but he had a mental health event that day and he was just thinking about her and not thinking about what he was doing. So, in this industry in 21, I guess it was, we lost 951 people on the job site to some type of injury. And how many of those people that were injured maybe just mentally weren't thinking where they were at? And something happened that they lost their lives. And while we lost 951 that year to job site fatalities, we lost more than 4,800 that year to suicide. Yet when we go to all these conferences and conventions, we want to talk about how to save the 951, and we don't talk about the 4,800. And now they think that number is probably 6,000, but the most recent data is out, that's just estimates.
Right.
So I think it's important for people to understand that just like we have physical health, we have mental health. And just like we have physical injury that's, kind of on a 0 to 10 maybe, you can have mental illness or mental injury that's on a scale of 0 to 10. My dad had me convinced that if men talked about their mental health and struggles and issues, that they would take you to Anna Jonesboro, where I grew up, and they would put you in the mental institution, and they might not even let you out. But just like you can have a sprained ankle, you can have a broken ankle, or maybe your ankle got decapitated. They're all physical injury, but some's more severe than another, right? And just like you can be going through depression, maybe where you're at in your evolution of depression, you just need someone to talk to. Maybe it's your spouse, maybe it's a parishioner, maybe it's a coworker, or maybe you do need to see a therapist. So it's a little more severe, right? Or maybe it's like my dad told me, they do need to put you somewhere to where you don't injure yourself or harm yourself or injure other people. So just like physical injury goes across the spectrum, mental illness, and I prefer to call it mental injury,
Oh,
goes across
yeah.
a spectrum.
Yeah.
Um, so we need to learn to be comfortable. And I tell business leaders and industry leaders that the younger generation are more open to these
Mm-hmm.
conversations.
Yeah.
In fact, they kind of expect to be able to have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Depending on who you listen to, we're going to lose a third of the construction workforce in like the next 7 years here in America. And those younger people have options. They don't
Yeah.
all have to come to construction. None of them have to come to construction, probably. They could do other things. And if we want them to be part of our construction community, we got to be open to allowing them to have those conversations, which means you got to set your company up to the ability to give those conversations. Um,
Yeah. And you're talking about, and that's beautiful because you're right. They are more open, and and what I think is so powerful is by opening up, we're normalizing the conversation, right? That it's okay. But what's so fascinating to me and in the work that we've been doing is once you do open that door, people start to go just like they have for you. Once they hear your story, then they come to you and they're like, well, I had this and I had this because we're all in this together, right? We've all have people who struggle, whether it's ourselves or our family in all the various ways. And I think that's something that connects us all. If we can just open the door, crack that door just enough to start having those conversations. And I love that you're talking about doing that top down modeling for that because we do talk about that a lot to the organizations of sharing your story. But you, as leaders, you really lead the tone and the way by being honest and authentic and also vulnerable in your own, in sharing your own story. But wow, what a powerful way to build that culture. Hmm.
where we're at, I mean,
Yeah. What do you think it is that holds leaders back from doing that?
we want to be strong, right? You're
Mm,
expected to be, I'm not saying this in an accepted way, but it's my generation. You're expected to be the man. You're expected to
mhm,
be the one pulling the group along with you. Hopefully, as we get more women into this industry, they will help be able to advance this movement. But I'm even
mhm,
fearful of that because I think that there's so much pressure on women to get into the
mhm.
trans industry
Yeah,
that doing that may be perceived as some type of sign of weakness, and it's absolutely
yeah,
not. So hopefully, but I understand the struggles and the issues that they
yeah,
go through.
absolutely. Yeah. When I love that you kind of connected the safety piece of it too, because that's such an important piece. Those things that we do all the time, we check the boxes, in that those safety protocols, but absolutely, you can do it 90% of the time, and the one time that you got your thoughts someplace else, something's going on that's got you flustered, kind of internally. Boy, one small mistake and could be detrimental.
I mean, someone out there coined the phrase. It's not my phrase, but the phrase is that mental health is the next frontier in physical workplace safety.
Mm,
If you go back 40 years, 50 years, however long it's been now, I mean, when I started in this industry, I wore shorts, work boots. I did wear work boots, but I wore shorts and no hard hat, no safety
mm,
vest. That's just
mm,
what you did. Now, God, I couldn't imagine going out with, I mean, we're a hard hat company, we're a safety vest company, we wear safety leggings at nighttime, we wear long pants, we have gloves, we have
yeah.
everything. So mental health, I think really is the next piece that will help lower that 951 number.
Mhm. Yeah.
Uh,
Well, and I think it's encouraging to know that how far you have come as an industry. Interestingly, my stepbrother was a pipe fitter, in the early 90s. And so he shares stories with me of what the job site looked like at lunchtime. Wow. I mean, you realize how far the industry has come in keeping people safe, and not, kind of eliminating, those kinds of things. And so let's certainly hope that we can make that much progress on the mental health front. Um,
the journey.
I'm Yeah, it is a journey and it's baby steps, and it's funny because I didn't ever plan to really be in this space. Certainly with our own story of my my stepbrother who, unfortunately, um, abused drugs, which started in the industry that was very accepted. Great coping mechanism, for construction workers. Of course, many other too, which led to his adult life of being incarcerated. And so I've always been very passionate about this, and started looking at the statistics probably 5 years ago. But it was just, well, I believe divine time, that we met certain people and started talking and really being able to help people move forward and create the culture that it sounds like you're creating, at Ajax. And
I mean, maybe some of you listen, I don't know what you shared with them in the past. Maybe they're wondering why are we even talking about this suicide piece? Um, in this industry, they ought to know that nationwide in the US, and this is a worldwide problem, but these are the US numbers. Um, Today, we'll lose 2 to 3 workers on average on the job site. Trench collapse, work zone intrusion by a car, electrocution, fall from height, whatever that is, 2 to 3. Yet today, we'll lose 10 to 15 to suicide. You're 5 times more likely to die by suicide in this industry than you are on the job site. Yet we always talk about job site safety. Um, in America, someone takes their life by suicide every 11 minutes. Internationally, every 46 seconds. Um, Teenage suicides up 150% since 2008. There was a little drop a year or two ago, but it's now gone back up again. And people tell me, well, God, I don't ever hear about any of this. Nobody, I don't know anything about it. And I ask them, well, in my industry, there's a supplier. I said, do any of you know Matt LaChance from Ingevity? Matt lost his son to suicide. And I can share that with you because Matt talks nationally about it and shares the story of
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
He's I interviewed him in my book I wrote, and his stories on there about him and his son. How about my friend in Tampa that had to rush his daughter to Tampa General in December of 22 that tried to take her life? How about my one of my foremen this year that talked to his daughter Christmas morning and Christmas afternoon she took her life just a few weeks ago? I said, how many stories do you want me to give you? I said, in our industry, why do people not hear about it? I said, well, we lost John on Interstate 75 in Charlotte County in 2016. He was hit by a dump truck at a high rate of speed, died instantly. And when that happened, the highway patrol came, the news and print media came. We had to notify OSHA. We had to notify the insurance carrier. It was everywhere. Yet a year earlier, I walked out of the office and Mark was sitting in his car and I waved to him and he waved to me. And he drove away and went back to his home in St. Petersburg. And a few hours later, he had taken his life. And nobody knew about that except people tight knit because the police didn't, we didn't call the highway patrol. I'm sure the police probably came to the home. It wasn't in the news media. It wasn't in the digital or print media. We didn't have to notify our insurance carrier. So it's behind the scene, didn't happen at work. So people don't know about it. It's a shameful topic, and we need to take the shame away from it. And I realize there's a lot of religious beliefs, and so I don't want to get into religion. But are you ashamed? Hey, my I want to go back and hit why we shouldn't say people commit suicide, because commit has a negative connotation that goes with the word commit. And if you're talking to someone and you ask them, are you thinking about committing suicide? You're saying to them, you're doing something terrible, awful, because what people do commit are homicides, robberies, murder, and they commit crimes of all types. My father died of heart disease. My mother and brother died of cancer. And none of the three committed to having any of the things they had. There were illnesses that they were going through. I would have told you that I never suffered from any type of mental illness in my life. I would have told you that I was sad, lonely, hurt, lost. A lot of words I would have used. I wouldn't have even used the word depressed. I would have told you I never had a mental illness. Um, just like my father and mother and brother didn't commit to having a physical illness, I didn't commit to having a mental illness. Because I never went and talked to a counselor until 2022. And the only reason I did then is because Dr. Wolgemuth, one of my professors, said, this is a deep, dark topic, and I know of your past, and I'm going to encourage you to go see a counselor. So I did. And at the third session, she wanted to let me know that I suffered from depression, anxiety, I had ADD, and I was controlling. And I told her I've never had any of those things. I don't know what you're talking about. And so when it was time to go back next week, I canceled. When it was time to go back the following week, I canceled. When it was time to go back the third week, I finally went back. And I told her I always thought that people that suffer from depression were all these weird things. And I thought that they were mentally ill, and I thought they were mentally ill for life. And what I learned is that depression just means that for more than 14 days, so on the 15th day, you've done something different in your routine from what you normally would do. Maybe you can't sleep and you're normally a good sleeper. Or maybe you sleep all the time now and you don't normally sleep. Or maybe you eat more or you eat less. I mean, whatever it is, something just changes. And so that's a sign that you're going through depression. And if you have depression, that's a sign of mental illness. But again, maybe you're on that spectrum to where you need to talk to your wife, and maybe not on the spectrum to where you need to be put away. So again, people don't commit suicide. And I'm not saying we shouldn't use the word suicide. People die by suicide. People take their lives by suicide. It's just hurtful to tell someone, I'm sorry to hear that your son committed suicide, because I made that mistake when I was interviewing a woman for my book and a mother. And she very quickly put me into my spot. And don't tell me that my son was a bad person, because my son had tried for years. He saw counselors. He went away to college, and while he was there, he saw counselors, and he called me and said, "Mom, I need to come back home." Um, and he did. He went back home and started seeing a different counselor, and he eventually took his life. And she said that's the only way that he knew how to end the pain. He tried. So don't tell me that he was a bad person.
Well, what a great lesson, right? For you. And there's just so much education that has to go into all of this, from the words to what it looks like and what the reality is, which is what you're explaining, of just like what depression looks like. Those misconceptions, um, especially, you're right, in those older generations who were raised, and it's not their fault. They had dads like yours. But the great news is that we can change how we think and how we see things, no matter how old we are. And
Well, my
that's
dad was a
awesome.
loving man. I mean, he
Of
wasn't
course.
a brute.
Yes.
He wasn't
No.
anything. It was just the time we grew up in.
Well, it's
And
how he was
I,
raised,
yeah, yeah,
right?
I
It was
tell
how he was
leaders,
raised.
I tell leaders in all industries, not just construction, that leaders today have it far more difficult than leaders did when I was younger. Because when I was younger, my boss that was a leader, he was leading a bunch of baby boomers and some of the greatest men that came from the greatest generation. That's what he was leading, right? Well, you take someone now that's my age, um, believe it or not, I think I still have one guy here. Well, no, he's not from the greatest generation, but I'm leading baby boomers. I'm leading X's, I'm leading Y's, I'm leading Z's, I'm leading all of those acronyms, and they're all different.
Yeah.
And they've got those classifications put on them because of how they behaved in events that happened through wars and just different events that have happened, economic downturn. And so it's difficult to be a leader today because you got to lead them all different. And you got to know who your audience is that day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I might have to have you back, and we could talk a lot longer, a lot more into leadership, because that's another passion of ours, is leadership development, which is those skills that we can all learn, but really does impact an organization. I want to hear a little bit more about your. I love that you recognized that you wanted to set Ajax up to be this initiative and this culture to be sustainable by creating your Ajax Warriors. So, how did that go? How did that evolve? Did you find that people were, open to that idea? Tell us a little bit more about that, because it sounds pretty much like a peer support program, which is what we kind of do within organizations, kind of training people to reach out or to be present with people, to listen, to refer, support, those kinds of things.
I have two ladies in the office. I mean, you can kind of see a picture there on the bottom left that they've given me. It says I'm the luckiest boss in the world for having them. Um,
Love it.
one was our safety director, one's our credit manager, and I went to
Mhm.
them and said, "Hey, I got this idea. Would you want to help me?" And they said, "Well, yeah, absolutely." And then a gentleman in the office um, came forward and he said, "Hey, I lost my dad 10 years ago." And none of us knew.
Mm,
And he
mm,
said, "I'd like to be part of that team." And then somebody else said, "Hey, I've got a kid that's struggling at home. I don't know if I want to necessarily help here, but can I be part of the team to learn what I can do at home?" And so, two became three, and three became four, and four
mm.
became 50. Nobody, we don't push anybody to be on it. They don't get any
Right.
incentives. They don't get additional
Hmm.
pay. They don't get any perks.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
just get the joy of knowing they're helping people by being on there.
Yeah,
And so, I mean, that's how the
that's
team
awesome.
started.
Yeah,
And now, we get more and more people asked to be on there, the more they learn about it.
yeah, that's awesome. Wow, just it's so inspiring.
I don't remember if it was maybe before we even you hit record, or maybe it was in the beginning. You said something about how do people begin this journey.
Hmm.
Um, So you've kind of heard, but the things that I think people need to walk away understanding how this begins is keep it simple first.
Mm-hmm.
Don't overcomplicate it, because I think that the medical industry and the mental health industry, um, I've sat in meetings in Orlando with MDs and head of hospitals and places, and we have totally different opinions. And so don't overcomplicate it. Keep it simple. Most everybody already has an employee assistance program. Find
Mm-hmm.
out what you have. And by find out what you have, that doesn't mean just, okay, we got health insurance, it got mental health. So call those numbers and find out what happens when you call them. Do you get an answering service? Do you get someone from the company? Do you get a recording? How quick does somebody get back with you? What resources
Mm-hmm.
they have? Because you may find that the tools you have are great, or you may find that the tools that you have are kind of, maybe we could do better. Because you don't want to add anything to what you already have until the people are already using what you have. Because the worst way or easiest way to maybe lose your leadership and to convince them that there's a great app out here, there's a great package, and it's only going to cost $80,000, but we're going to save lives. And so you get it and you put it in the employee assistance program, and what does it become? Another tool that nobody uses because they're not already using what you have. So learn what you have. And then after 18 months, we added some things to our program, but it took us 18 months to get people using what we had, look at what was out there. And so don't overcomplicate it. Don't spend a lot of money on it. Build a team
Mm-hmm.
and go slow.
Yeah.
Where,
Love it.
a lot of these industries and a lot of these industries are businesses, just like I'm a business, so they make money. And
Mm-hmm.
my opinion is, and the way that we will fix the suicide piece of the mental health crisis and also the mental health crisis is by opening up conversations. Because most people are not going to have to use any of those other resources unless they're forced to use them. And most people I've learned that do go to either alcohol treatment or different places, the majority of the time, those programs, they're less successful a lot more than they are successful because you got to have a peer group, a support group, your family at work,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that is to help you through these. So
Yeah.
it doesn't cost any money to do this.
Yeah. Great advice. Great advice, Vince. Thank you. Hopefully that will inspire some of our listeners to do something, right? And I love keeping it simple because you don't have to have it all figured out. Just take one baby step. And I think we know from change for all of us, this, those small steps start to really add up to bigger changes, but it's those baby steps that we can do. I love also that you talked about your resources and EAPs because that's one thing that we have found. And one thing that we encourage people to do is actually call their resources that they have and explore how what that's like so that they can know because some of them don't return your call, and boy, that could be really detrimental if you have a resource that's not going to be supportive to your people and if you're promoting it. So
I
yeah.
mean, there is a 988 National Suicide and
Yes.
Helpline, and what a lot of people don't know about that helpline is that if I have a friend that's struggling and I don't know what to do, I can call the 988 number and ask them for
Yes.
guidance. So help me, tell me what to do. And
Yeah, I love that. I think that's so awesome because I think you're right. Most people think it's just for them. In fact, I was thinking about I'm doing a training about resources in a couple of months, and I was thinking about having everyone just call the 988 number and just see what it's like when you call, and just experience it a little bit to have that kind of one under the belt to know firsthand kind of what kind of help they can provide. So yeah, awesome. So many good things.
there used to be this stigma if you thought, or idea that if you thought someone was struggling from suicide, you shouldn't ask them. And that's been proven to be false, and it's
Yeah.
been proven to be, I mean, it doesn't, you need to ask. And
Right.
if you ask someone, I tell people if we do this mental health piece, maybe we'll never have to ask about the suicide
No.
question, right? Because if we take care
Yeah.
of all this, maybe they won't ever get there. But if you think someone is struggling and it's uncomfortable to ask them on a Friday, like I had to do a few weeks or a few months ago now with one of my good friends,
Mhm.
as difficult as that conversation is, to get the phone call over the weekend and have to live with the
Yeah.
fact that I could have but didn't is a lot worse. And if you think someone's suicidal, the three questions you should ask them are you thinking about taking your life? Not you're not thinking about committing suicide. You're not going to do something stupid like go and kill yourself, are you? No,
Right.
just are you thinking about suicide? Are you thinking about taking your life, however you want to word that?
Mhm.
And if they tell you yes, then you should ask them, well, have you thought about how you would do this? Well, yeah, I would do this or I would do that. And then the
Mhm.
third question is, well, do you have the means to do that? Um, and if they have the means to do that, then you need to do what I've done in the past and say, hey, can I come and get your pills from you? Can I come and get your guns from you? Can I come and
Mhm.
do whatever it is? And I mean, I never knew that when I was at that point in my life that the guns had been taken out of my house after that night for several months. Shows you how much I used my guns. And but they took them out and they were in a neighbor's house. And when I was back and feeling good, I got the guns back. They gave them to me. But um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Great. Thank you. Thank you for sharing those three things too for our audiences. Um, just because sometimes it is, they don't know what to say. And you're right, saying nothing is far worse than the uncomfortableness of, you know, just coming right out and asking. Yeah.
hey, it is
Yeah.
uncomfortable. I'm not
It
telling
is.
you it is.
It is. It
Yeah.
is. Yes. It certainly is, but
And you might
worth
have
it.
to ask it more than once, and you might have to ask it
Mm.
on more than one day.
Yeah. 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 Thank you. As we kind of wrap up, there's just been so much great information that you shared with us. I'm curious about how you manage your mental health, and obviously, I'm guessing since you are training and you're an Ironman athlete that
Well,
exercise has
I'm not
something.
that anymore. I haven't done one of those now for
Oh,
about 6 years, so my body
okay.
fell
Well,
apart.
still, that's impressive. But training for the Appalachian Trail is a big feat. But what do you do to help you manage stress and anxiety and just the navigate life these days? What are your go-tos?
I try to just set some time and just close my eyes,
Mhm.
take a deep breath, exhale, think about something serene, something enjoying. Um, I still occasionally go talk to a therapist.
Good.
We have a program we use at work through a company, and there's a gentleman there that um, he's been through issues, and so I call and I can talk to him.
Yeah.
Um, I enjoy getting out in nature, and
Yeah.
uh, sometimes I've recently gotten into going and doing primitive camping because that's what you'll have to do in the Appalachians. So I get my gear and walk 9 miles out into the middle of alligator land down here and sleep amongst the gators and hogs and coyotes and
Oh my gosh.
just I really enjoy nature.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
I recently found the pastor that married Stacy and I and baptized me. He'd left and gone to teach at an elementary school, and then I found him at his church again. So
Mm.
I'm back and seeing him, and he's had me do some things at the church on the topic. So I mean, you just got to find what
Yeah.
works for you. If it's
Yeah.
painting a car, or painting a house, or painting whatever it is, or
Hmm.
um, alcohol doesn't help it.
No.
Um,
No.
it's if you're depressed, alcohol is a depressant and only makes it worse. It
Mm.
makes it fine for a short period. So I don't rely on alcohol. I never have. I've never relied on drugs. Yeah, I mean, you just that's what works for me.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Well, and you're right, we're all different. And I also find that I'm always kind of changing. So adding some different things in, and depending on the season of life I'm in, I might have to change things up a little bit that maybe used to work but aren't really working anymore, and just staying open to yeah, being an advocate for ourselves, um, and giving ourselves permission to do that. So yeah, tell really quick. You mentioned a book. So what is your book? I didn't know you had one.
Oh, I have one here. You see it?
Mental health and suicide. Very good.
That's me in
Okay.
1967 in the plaid jacket in first grade, and that's
Love
me
it.
with a hard hat out the day we went and saw 3 crews that day. I had that hard hat on, and one crew wanted to tell us about an alcohol intervention they did with their crew. Another one wanted to tell us about his father's suicide, another guy in the company. And the third one wanted to show us where he had tried to slice his wrist to take his life 3 years earlier. And then that's the day I stood up in front of the 400 people and told them about that night. The book's from my research, but it's in 3 sections. Section 1 is about my growing up and takes you through 2007. It takes you through all of that. And then in the middle piece, the 12 people I interviewed. I interviewed 13, but one pulled out that I interviewed that lost a father or a sibling or a coworker, and to tell them their story and the impact it had on them. And then the back of the book shares a piece of the research I did. I mean, you can sit down and probably read it in 2 hours. It's short. You can buy it on Amazon, and
Okay.
I'm not
I was
trying
gonna,
to sell it. You don't
no,
make
no,
any
no, no,
money
no.
off a book, so.
Of course not. No, but I love that because I think that that might be a good resource for people if they're looking for something, just to explore that a little bit more. And I know, um, Vince, what is your website? Because I also know you speak. I've mentioned you because I would love to get you to Kansas City sometime. But what is your website?
My personal one, just www.vincehafeli.com,
Okay.
VINCEHAFELI.com.
Okay.
Um,
So if people wanted to reach out to you, they could do
they
it
can go to the
that
website, and
way.
there's a place there where they can send me a question, and I respond to 100% of them,
Nice.
whatever the
Okay.
question may be.
Yeah.
And if I can't answer it, I'll tell you I can't answer it. Um, if people are interested, we've got documents we've created here at Ajax. I could either share those with you, or I could share them with people if they want to email me. But
Okay.
um,
Great.
I'm not trying to
Yeah.
make any money off of doing this, so I'll do whatever I can to
No.
help people.
Yeah. Wow. My goodness, what a joy to visit with you in person, and just want to thank you for being such a huge voice in this space and for leading the way and being a champion. And what a legacy you are going to leave behind. And just all the inspiration that hopefully is going to happen out there from you telling your story and doing what you've done at Ajax. So kudos to you, and just thank you. Yeah.
This will be my closing comment because I assume we're about done. I
Yeah.
think it's important for men to know, and ladies, but men in particular, because that's where I go with predominantly, between TEDx talk views and between the now 86 places I've been and given talks, I've hit over 3 million people. And out of the 3 million, and I read the comments on the TEDx talks, and people come up to me. I've had one gentleman, which was a professor out of the state of Oklahoma, that had anything negative to say. Everybody else had been positive and supportive. So if you're afraid that
Yeah.
people are going to laugh at you as a leader, or my experience is that not 1 in a million, but 1 in 3 million will.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, thank you for the good work you're doing, and keep it up for sure. And I look forward to staying connected with you, Vince, and good luck on your Appalachian trail, you know, trek. And yeah, I think we'll wrap this up. Certainly, our Mindful Momentum podcast, we're here to inspire and empower your journey toward a life of mindfulness. So, if you're interested in you know people, feel free to share this. podcast, subscribe, comment, like. Certainly, anyone listening can reach out to us at mindful-momentum.com. We'd be happy to connect you to Vince as well if that's easier. But just again, thank you, Vince. What a pleasure. Inspiring to me to keep at this work in this industry, and hopefully we can get more people, moving in this direction and make a difference and start to bring those statistics that are staggering down. That's our hope. And even if we save, one life with this podcast, it would definitely be all worth it. So,
it's a great industry, but we can make it better.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. All right. Well, take care.